Sean, do you think we're going to get to 18 games?
I would love 18 games. I'm a barbarian. I'm a caveman. I would love to watch more football as possible. But the NFL has a very tricky mistake to avoid with adding games onto the schedule. As we have seen the bump from 16 games to 17 games, I'm pretty cool with it. It still feels like every game has that value, every game matters. When we keep on moving it up and bumping it up, we have to realize the play is going to decrease on the field. There's more wear and tear on every single player. You're not going to get 100%. We might see players decide to do load management. They need to keep the NFL at a respectable, maxed out 17 game schedule. If they moved it back to 16, I wouldn't be opposed. And this also builds off of just a general conversation you and I had a week ago, week and a half ago, about other sports leagues botching it and other sports leagues having too many games. The NBA having too many games. Baseball, I'm fine with. Hockey has too many games in a season. Regular diehard fans might enjoy it, but casuals, it's too hard to get into. It doesn't feel like that game matters when you just flip to it. NFL game, even if it's a crappy one on Thursday, you turn it on, it means something to somebody.
I see. The more that I've thought about this, I'm kind of out on the expansion, and you basically just alluded to it. And the context that you just brought up, I have the opposite reaction. Knowing that the NBA is way too much volume and the MLB is way too much volume, I have no problem with the hockey length, even though it's basically the same. It is hard to get invested with the amount of games that are played in both of those leagues, especially in the NBA, when there is a lot of load management, when there's a lack of availability for players, where they're not participating. And we're starting to see a little bit of this in the NFL, where that last week of the season where, some people thought, there's going to be really some competitive battles to win divisions. Most teams aren't participating. Everybody was griping about how the Chiefs mailed it in and screwed over the Bengals, blah, blah, blah. That whole nonsense where they didn't play any of their starters.
Yeah.
That's an example of most of the games. The only good competitive battle to win the division was Vikings versus Lions, and one could have argued that it actually didn't even make sense for either of those teams to really try because they played like shit in their first playoff games. I don't know if that was really worth it, especially a Lions team that was as banged up as they were. There were no injuries that came out of that game. But my point is that you're putting all this effort into playing a violent sport that has so much wear and tear involved, even more than basketball and baseball, and you add this extra game, it's just going to be slop. Is that what we are? We're just pigs here consuming the slop? Is that we just that stupid and happy?
It's the slop era. And as a slop consumer, continuous slop consumer, in every facet of my life, I can get down with the slop, but I am opposed to it from an overarching viewpoint. Like we should be getting away from slop. We should not be diving deeper into it. And to be fair, it's not like this last week of the season's woes is the first time it's happened. There was a bunch of outrage when the Jim Caldwell led Colts with Peyton Manning were like 15-0 going into week 16. They already had the number one seed locked up, and they took it off. They went 15-1 that season in the regular season, and then they moved on. People were upset that they didn't go for the record. People were upset that they sat starters. This stuff happens in the NFL. So I understand, but that's like the 1% of football teams typically in a season that are locking it up. For the most part, we're going to see a general sloppiness, and it's supposed to be a gladiator sport where you go in and anybody can get hurt or anyone can score or there's a big battle that happens every single time. If we get more of those battles, it's not going to feel the same way. It's going to feel more like a flag tournament throughout the season.
Yeah, but we're going to get a lot less of like a theoretical battle between the Commanders and the Eagles, and it's going to be mostly Jaguars Titans. Just like awful shit teams that have nothing to play for, that are just donking around for 4 quarters, and you flip on over to it, or you're watching Red Zone. It's like, oh, great. Now we got to watch this game again. I guess you got some, a little bit of skin in the game because you've got a fantasy player because your 4th running back got hurt. So they're
at that point
streamlining another running back. You're like, oh, I guess I got to kind of know what's happening. Is that what it is? People betting on the crap too. Is that all that it takes?
You're working right down that vein right here. I think the betting companies are getting too big. The fantasy companies are getting too big and powerful. Mm-hmm. It's just such a cash cow. How are we not getting more of this? That's what the boardroom meetings have to be. We are making so much money off of people betting on the games and putting in for fantasy and all the auxiliary football nonsense for the finance bros, for rubes like us, for everybody that enjoys but isn't playing. It's a money machine. So making this push, and I can't wait to see the spin that gets put on it if it does get approved. I can't wait to see all the different contingencies and player friendly bonuses and perks.
Well, look at the money that was spent this offseason. It was I would love to know. I'm sure somebody will crunch the numbers and say, like, this was the increase in the amount of money that was spent in the size of the size of the contracts. I don't know if enough people realize how massive with the salary cap, how much it went up. It went up a lot more than it usually does. The contracts this year were freaking nuts.
Yeah.
Like, really random example. Will Fries is a good starting guard, and he got paid crazy freaking money. I think it was 5 years, $88 million, which is insane money to go to a guy who was a 7th-round pick not that long ago. Money going all over the place to random dudes.
So the sport is flooded, but you almost can't let the corporate overlords take it over at this point. Like, there has to be some type of cap on reality with the growth of the game, and say, where do we really want to, where are we going to find our most value moving forward? All the number crunchers are going to say gambling and fantasy. All the ball knowers are going to say, well, keep the best players on the field healthy and continue to have a solid draft pipeline. And you're going to continually have stars in the game of football. Maybe less penalties would help. Maybe that's what we would address. More actual football on the field, less touchdowns taken back on a BS backdoor holding call. Like, there's a lot of things I would review before I started thinking another game would really benefit us.
Let's try to problem solve this. What would be a better alternative than an 18th game? What if we added 2 more teams? You'd have to pay or not. You'd have to, more money would have to go towards those 2 teams. So I guess there'd be less money in the overall pot to be split up, but then arguably you have more games to broadcast.
How would that shake up the divisions also?
I just throw them wherever.
Because we're just okay.
We'll just make a new division. Well, we'd probably have to shrink. There would be 34 teams.
34 would be tough because we've got 8.
Yeah, we'd probably have to move up to 36. There were uneven division sizes for a while in the NFL because remember there were 30 teams.
That's
there were
right.
Also 28 at one point.
I'd put a team back in St. Louis for sure. Drop a team right there. They could be the St. Louis Rams 2.0 or whatever they want to be called. I don't know if the East Coast needs one. The South probably needs a team that they could rally behind. I don't know if the Birmingham Stallions have grown enough to place one down there. That market does not seem. I don't even need a big football market either. I just need a good football market.
Like somewhere that's team.
But they're also SEC country. You're going to be battling with SEC teams. I don't think they're starved for an NFL team down in SEC country.
It's not a bad point. Does adding extra teams actually solve the problem we're talking about here, where we have less shit games? Or no, we'd have more shit games, but we'd have one less week.
I would take we also don't have a star grouping problem in the NFL. Like, I would add teams if I wanted to add a little more, not have super teams pairing up, but we don't have that in football, which I'm grateful for. Every team kind of has a shot. And even as we thought the Chiefs had maybe a close to Warriors rise, they still got knocked off this past season in the Super Bowl by just a well-built team. I don't know if teams added is what I need. I might need roughing the passer canceled or really taken down a notch back to an early 2000s level of roughing the passer.
That feels like an indirect issue that needs to be resolved at a later date.
That's what I would prioritize over. For an immediate fix to the game, I'd put that as a higher priority on my list than adding a game.
Adding another week.
Or adding another week, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't. My whole issue with this is the obvious upside is the money that comes flowing in. That is the obvious, dumb, clear upside and the reason why they're doing this. The players have no reason to say yes to this other than their paychecks probably being a little bit bigger. More backup offensive tackles getting starter money like they did this past free agency cycle.
I'd add relegation before I added.
Some sort of relegation system.
I'd add those 2 teams and the top 2 UFL teams, whatever, can start and become the next 2 up, and the last teams, like the first 2 the teams that would have the top 2 overall picks, They get tagged out for the 2 teams that are coming up, and then
Okay.
they have to go battle it out in the UFL for a little bit.
I have a better idea. It's in the same vein. What if we have a losers bracket? So then you've got more playoff games, and the winner of the losers bracket is fighting for playoff, or not playoff, for draft order. So the where you finish in the losers bracket determines where you're picking.
Oh. I wouldn't mind a if we could math it, I wouldn't mind a separate losers tournament.
That's what I'm saying here. So you would
Like the last
add the same
4
amount of TV inventory probably for adding this extra game, if not more TV inventory, and you'd have more competitive games. You'd have these stupid idiot fan bases that are just depressed like me,
Yeah.
like the Giants fans are. I'd have something to kind of root for and be excited about instead of just sitting on my ass and watching the playoffs in a depressed, pissed off state all the time.
If you could take the first 8 teams eliminated from playoff contention and have them compete for the first 8 picks of the NFL draft, whoever wins it.
So then the other ones just go fuck themselves.
The other one,
like,
yeah,
you just go do whatever the hell you want.
Sorry, yeah, but would they start tanking to get into the tournament to try to win that to get the number 1 overall pick? Because that also solves the number 1 overall pick, who would be probably the best quarterback, getting ruined by the worst team in football that can't surround him with a good team. Whereas the teams that are truly awful will be picking 7 and 8, and then they are going to have to find a way to build a team before they can draft a quarterback.
I'm sure that there would be a lot of pushback. Well, maybe arguably there'd be enough hubris from teams to think that they would be able to compete in that losers bracket.
What's that, 3 weeks? 8-game tournament is 3 weeks. First round 8, second round 4, last round 2.
3 weeks. A 3-week tournament. So that gets you there'd be 4 games plus 2 games plus 1 game is 7 games. That would give us 7 games. 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. Wow, we're great mathematicians here.
I'd take an extra 7 in that realm.
Well, I know. Anyway, that technically is the equivalent of if we play. No, that's not the equivalent if we play an extra week, because an extra week of football. Wow, we're really shit at math here. Because 32 divided by 2 is 16. Shit. You have to add something else, but. I think we're onto something here. I think that this would be a lot more intriguing.
It's better than
forcing another. Seriously, most of that last week inventory is watching Browns versus Bengals, and they're both out of the playoffs.
Yeah, put those games on the. I would put those games on. God, they're competing with CFP too. That would get real busy, but NFL would dominate that. They would still dominate. I would rather have this in the NBA in-season tournament, where they're just competing for a million.
Waste of time.
No, we're in the era of fans want to see consequences as much as they want to see victories and reward. So giving a tournament that does have consequences on the sport for playing poorly, I'm actually in on this. I'm starting to really grow fondly of this idea.
And then we take those middle grouping of teams that you pitched, and then we put them into a golf tournament.